Here's a paradox that stops most spiritual seekers in their tracks. You're told that karma determines everything in your life, every circumstance, every encounter, every moment of joy or suffering. Yet you're also told to follow the Dharma, to make choices, to practice diligently to transform yourself. But if karma controls everything, how can your choices matter? And if your choices matter, what role does karma actually play? This apparent contradiction has confused Western students of Buddhism for decades, but Tibetan teachings offer a resolution so elegant, so profound, that understanding it can revolutionize your entire spiritual path. If you're ready to dissolve one of the deepest confusions on the spiritual journey, subscribe now and activate notifications, because what we're about to explore will fundamentally change how you understand causality, free will, and your own power to transform. The concepts of karma and dharma stand at the absolute core of Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, yet they're also among the most misunderstood teachings when they encounter Western minds. We tend to think of karma as some cosmic system of punishment and reward, like a spiritual credit score that follows you from life to life. We think of dharma as a set of religious rules, duties imposed by tradition. Both of these understandings miss the mark entirely. The Tibetan teachings offer something far more sophisticated, a comprehensive understanding of how reality operates and how you can work skillfully within that operation to achieve complete liberation. Let's begin with karma, a Sanskrit word that literally means action. But in the Tibetan Buddhist context, karma refers to something much more specific than just any action. It refers to intentional action, actions driven by volition, by the mental factor of intention. This distinction is absolutely crucial. If you're walking down the street and a strong wind knocks you into someone, that's not karma. There was no intention behind it. But if you deliberately push someone, or if you carefully avoid pushing someone despite being angry, both of those are karmic actions because they involve intention. The Tibetan tradition, drawing on centuries of Indian Buddhist philosophy, particularly the Abhidharma texts and the teachings of masters like Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu, developed an extraordinarily detailed understanding of how karma works. Every intentional action plants a seed in your consciousness, what the tradition calls a karmic imprint or karmic propensity. These seeds remain dormant in your mental continuum until conditions ripen them, at which point they manifest as experiences. The action of planting the seed and the experience of its fruition might be separated by moments, years, or even lifetimes. This isn't mysticism or superstition. It's a precise description of how habits form and perpetuate themselves. Every time you act with anger, you strengthen the tendency toward anger. You make it more likely that anger will arise again in similar circumstances. Every time you act with generosity, you strengthen the tendency toward generosity. You're literally programming your own consciousness through your intentional actions. Modern neuroscience validates this understanding with its discoveries about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated behaviors and thoughts. The neural pathways you activate repeatedly become stronger, more automatic, more your default way of being. But Tibetan Buddhism takes this understanding much further than contemporary psychology. The tradition teaches that these karmic seeds don't just influence your current life. They carry forward into future lives, shaping the circumstances of your rebirth, the body and mind you'll have, the environment you'll be born into, the opportunities and challenges you'll face. If you've cultivated wisdom and compassion over many lifetimes, you'll be born with propensities toward those qualities. If you've cultivated hatred and ignorance, those will be your karmic inheritance. Now, before you dismiss this as unprovable religious doctrine, consider what the teaching actually claims. It's not asking you to believe in rebirth on faith. It's saying that if consciousness continues after death, which is an open question that science hasn't definitively answered either way, then the patterns established in consciousness would logically continue as well. The teaching invites investigation, not blind acceptance. Many Tibetan meditation masters report direct memories of previous lives that they claim to access through deep meditative states. Whether you accept these reports or not, the teaching about karma's mechanics remains useful even if you only apply it to this life. The law of karma operates with absolute precision. In the Tibetan understanding, there are 4 principles of karmic causation that are as reliable as the laws of physics. First, karma is definite. Positive actions bring pleasant results. Negative actions bring unpleasant results. You cannot plant an apple seed and get an orange tree. Second, karma multiplies. A small action can have enormous consequences. A single moment of genuine compassion can plant seeds that ripen across lifetimes. A single moment of intense hatred can create suffering for eons. Third, you don't experience results from actions you haven't committed. You're not randomly assigned suffering. Everything you experience is the fruition of your own previous intentional actions. Fourth, karmic seeds once planted never disappear on their own. They will eventually ripen unless you actively purify them through specific practices. These 4 principles might sound deterministic, even fatalistic. If everything you experience now is the result of previous karma, and if every action now creates future karma, aren't you just trapped in an endless chain of cause and effect with no escape? This is where Dharma enters, and where the profound difference between these 2 concepts becomes clear. If you're starting to see how these pieces fit together, leave a comment below. Tell us what's clicking for you, or what questions are arising. This isn't passive information. This is a map of reality that you can test and verify through your own experience. Dharma is a word with multiple layers of meaning, each essential to understanding the complete picture. In its broadest sense, Dharma means truth or the way things are. It refers to the actual nature of reality, the laws that govern existence. In this sense, karma is part of Dharma. The law of cause and effect is simply how reality operates. But Dharma also means teaching, particularly the teachings of the Buddha that explain reality's true nature. And Dharma means path, the practices and methods that allow you to work with reality skillfully, rather than remaining trapped in confusion. Here's the key insight that resolves the apparent contradiction between karma and Dharma. Karma describes the mechanism of cause and effect, how your past actions have created your present circumstances, and how your present actions create your future circumstances. Dharma describes both the principles by which this mechanism operates and the methods for using that mechanism to achieve liberation rather than continued bondage. Karma is the system. Dharma is both the instruction manual for the system and the way to transcend the system entirely. Let me make this concrete with an example. Imagine you're born with a hot temper. According to the teaching on karma, this temperament is the result of previous lifetimes of acting out anger. You've strengthened that tendency so much that it's now a defining characteristic of your personality. You might encounter minor provocations and explode with rage, damaging relationships, creating suffering for yourself and others, and planting more karmic seeds that will ripen as future suffering. This is karma in action, the momentum of previous intentions manifesting and creating conditions for future manifestations. But you're not helpless. This is where Dharma comes in. The Buddha taught specific methods for working with anger. You can practice mindfulness, learning to notice anger arising before you act on it. You can practice patience, training yourself to remain present with the uncomfortable energy of anger without immediately reacting. You can investigate anger's nature, looking closely at what it actually is in your direct experience. Is it a solid thing or a changing process? Does it have a fixed location in your body or mind? Where does it come from and where does it go? Through these Dharma practices, you begin to change your relationship to anger. You stop identifying with it as who you are. You see it as a conditioned pattern, a habit that arose from causes and will cease when its causes are removed. Over time, with consistent practice, the tendency toward anger weakens. You're purifying the karmic seeds of past angry actions and planting new karmic seeds of patience and wisdom. Eventually, anger might arise, but it no longer controls you. You've used Dharma to work skillfully with karma. This is the profound difference and the profound relationship between these concepts. Karma without Dharma is bondage, an endless cycle of unconscious reactivity where past conditioning determines present experience, which creates future conditioning in an unbreakable chain. But Dharma applied to karma is liberation. You're using wisdom to see the patterns clearly and compassion to motivate their transformation. You're not fighting against the law of cause and effect. You're understanding it so thoroughly that you can work with it to create entirely different causes that lead to awakening rather than continued suffering. The Tibetan tradition is extraordinarily sophisticated about this. The great master Tsongkhapa, founder of the Gelug school, wrote extensively in his masterwork the Lamrim Chenmo about the relationship between karma and dharma. He emphasized that understanding karma is the foundation of dharma practice. If you don't understand that your actions have consequences, if you don't take responsibility for the patterns you're creating, you have no basis for practice. You'll keep blaming external circumstances for your suffering, waiting for the world to change rather than changing yourself. But Tsongkhapa also warned against becoming paralyzed by karma. Some students, upon learning about karmic causation, become terrified of acting at all. They worry that every action might create negative karma that leads to future suffering. This is a misunderstanding. The point isn't to stop acting. The point is to act with wisdom and compassion rather than with ignorance, hatred, and craving. Positive actions create positive results. Cultivating virtue isn't karmic bondage. It's the foundation for eventual liberation. The Tibetan teachings distinguish between different types of karma. There's negative karma, actions motivated by the three poisons of ignorance, attachment, and aversion. These actions inevitably lead to suffering. There's positive karma, actions motivated by their opposites, wisdom, non-attachment, and loving kindness. These actions lead to happiness and favorable circumstances. But there's also neutral karma, actions that are neither particularly virtuous nor particularly harmful, and unfluctuating karma, the specific karmic accumulations that lead to refined meditative states. Most importantly, there's what the tradition calls uncontaminated karma, or the karma of the path. These are actions done with complete wisdom, with full understanding of emptiness, the absence of inherent existence in all phenomena. These actions don't bind you to cyclic existence because they're not driven by the fundamental ignorance that creates bondage. This is Dharma, in its purest form, action that's completely in alignment with reality as it actually is. Understanding this distinction opens up the entire Bodhisattva path. A Bodhisattva acts constantly, tirelessly working for the benefit of all beings. But these actions aren't creating bondage because they're motivated by bodhicitta, the awakening mind, and guided by wisdom, realizing emptiness. The Bodhisattva accumulates vast stores of positive karma through countless acts of generosity, ethical discipline, patience, and compassion. But this karma isn't ordinary karma that simply produces pleasant experiences. It's merit dedicated to the enlightenment of all beings, and it becomes the supportive condition for complete awakening. Hit that like button if this is making sense, if you're seeing how these pieces form a complete picture. And stay with us because we're about to explore how you can actually apply this understanding in your daily life, starting right now. Let's get practical. How do you work with karma and dharma in everyday situations? The Tibetan tradition offers specific guidelines that are as relevant in modern life as they were in ancient monasteries. These guidelines are often summarized as the 10 non-virtuous actions to avoid and their virtuous opposites to cultivate. Understanding these gives you a clear map for purifying negative karma and accumulating positive karma. The 10 non-virtuous actions are divided into 3 categories based on body, speech, and mind. The 3 non-virtuous actions of body are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. The 4 non-virtuous actions of speech are lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle gossip. The 3 non-virtuous actions of mind are covetousness, malice, and wrong view. Each of these actions plants karmic seeds that ripen as specific types of suffering. But the teaching isn't just a list of prohibitions. It's an understanding of how certain actions naturally lead to negative consequences because they arise from and reinforce the 3 poisons. When you kill, you're acting from aversion, the wish for something not to exist. This strengthens your tendency toward anger and hatred, making you more likely to experience those states and the suffering they bring. When you steal, you're acting from attachment and craving, reinforcing those mental patterns. When you lie, you're acting from ignorance and confusion, muddying your own perception of reality. The opposites are equally clear. When you protect life, you're cultivating compassion and your environment becomes safer. When you practice generosity instead of stealing, you're reducing attachment and you naturally experience abundance. When you speak truthfully, you're aligning yourself with reality and others come to trust you. These aren't arbitrary moral rules imposed by authority. They're observations about how consciousness works and how to work with it skillfully. Modern life presents endless opportunities to apply these principles. You're in a business meeting and you could exaggerate your accomplishments to look better. That's a moment where karma and dharma meet. You can act from ego and craving for approval, planting seeds that will ripen as future anxiety and lack of self-worth. Or you can act from integrity, speaking truthfully even if it's less impressive, planting seeds that ripen as confidence and trustworthiness. The choice is entirely yours and the consequences are entirely yours as well. You're scrolling social media and you see something that triggers outrage. You could immediately share it with an inflammatory comment, spreading divisive speech and harsh speech into the world. That feels satisfying in the moment, but you're strengthening your tendency toward reactivity and anger. Or you could pause, investigate whether the post is even accurate, consider whether sharing it will actually help anyone, and choose to respond with wisdom and compassion if you respond at all. Again, the choice and the consequences are yours. The Tibetan tradition recognizes that we can't become perfect overnight. We've accumulated karmic patterns over countless lifetimes. We're going to make mistakes, act unskillfully, cause harm despite our best intentions. This is where the Dharma practice of purification becomes essential. The tradition offers specific methods for purifying negative karma before it ripens, preventing future suffering. The most famous of these methods involves 4 powers. First is the power of regret, genuinely acknowledging that you acted harmfully and feeling appropriate remorse without drowning in guilt or self-hatred. Second is the power of reliance, reconnecting with your sources of refuge and inspiration, whether that's the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in the traditional formulation or whatever represents your highest values and aspirations. Third is the power of remedy, actively engaging in positive practices like meditation, generosity, or service to counteract the negative action. Fourth is the power of resolve, making a sincere commitment to avoid that action in the future. These 4 powers work together to purify karmic seeds before they ripen. The tradition teaches that negative karma, unlike positive karma, can be completely purified if you apply these practices with genuine sincerity. This is extraordinarily good news. You're not permanently stuck with the consequences of every mistake you've ever made. Through Dharma practice, you can actually cleanse your mental continuum of destructive patterns and their future effects. But there's an even deeper level to this teaching. As you advance in practice, you begin to realize that karma itself is empty of inherent existence. Karma operates, causes produce effects, but the whole process is dependently originated, lacking any solid, independent reality. This realization is what the tradition calls the wisdom realizing emptiness, and it's the ultimate purification. When you directly perceive that both the actor and the action lack inherent existence, that they arise only in dependence on causes and conditions and on the conceptual labels we apply, the binding power of karma is cut at its root. This doesn't mean karma stops operating. It means you're no longer fooled by it. You understand it as a conventional process, valid and important on its own level, but not ultimately real in the way your ordinary mind assumes. You continue to act carefully, avoiding harm and cultivating virtue, but you're not driven by hope and fear. You act from wisdom and compassion, not from anxiety about future karmic results. Share your experience in the comments. Have you noticed how your habitual patterns perpetuate themselves? Have you experienced any success in changing those patterns? Your insights might help others on this path. And if this exploration is valuable to you, share this video. This knowledge needs to reach everyone who's struggling with these profound questions. Now let's examine how the relationship between karma and dharma plays out in the specific path of meditation. When you sit down to meditate, you're engaging directly with both concepts simultaneously. The fact that you have the opportunity to meditate, that you encountered these teachings, that you have some interest in practice, all of this is the result of positive karma from previous lives. The Tibetan tradition teaches that being born human is extraordinarily rare and precious, because humans have the optimal balance of suffering and leisure for spiritual practice. Too much comfort, and you're not motivated to change. Too much suffering, and you're too overwhelmed to practice. Your human life is a karmic result. But what you do with that human life, whether you use it for awakening or waste it on distraction and self-centered pursuits, that's Dharma. That's your choice in this moment. And that choice creates the karma that will determine your future opportunities. The cycle is complete, continually feeding back on itself. Past karma creates present conditions. Present Dharma practice creates future karma. Future karma creates future conditions. Each moment is both a result and a cause, both predetermined by the past and open to influence by wise action. When you meditate, you're working directly with this process. Shamatha or calm-abiding practice stabilizes your mind so you can see karmic patterns clearly, instead of being swept away by them. You watch thoughts arise and pass away, emotions come and go, sensations fluctuate constantly. Where in all this flux is the solid self that karma supposedly happens to? The more closely you look, the more you see that there's just a process, a flowing river of experience with no fixed center. Vipassana or insight practice takes this investigation deeper. You examine the thoughts, emotions, and sensations themselves. What are they made of? Where do they come from? What is their nature? You discover that they're empty of inherent existence, that they arise in dependence on causes and conditions and can't be found under analysis. This direct realization is what cuts the root of karmic bondage. You're not destroying karma or making it disappear. You're seeing through the fundamental ignorance that makes karma binding. The Tibetan tradition describes different levels of realization along this path. At first, you have intellectual understanding. You've heard the teachings about karma and dharma. They make sense conceptually, but they haven't transformed your experience. You still react habitually, driven by the patterns you've always followed. This intellectual understanding is important. It points you in the right direction, but it's not liberation. Then through practice, you begin to have experiential understanding. You notice anger arising in meditation and you see it as a process rather than as who you are. You observe how certain thoughts lead inevitably to certain emotions which lead to certain impulses to act. You're watching karma unfold in real time within your own consciousness. This experiential understanding begins to change how you relate to your mind. You have more space, more choice, less identification with every passing thought and emotion. With continued practice comes realization. This isn't just understanding karma and dharma intellectually or even experientially. This is directly perceiving the empty nature of phenomena, including the phenomena of karmic cause and effect. You see that the whole elaborate structure of past causes, creating present effects, creating future causes, is like a dream or an illusion. It functions on its own level, but it has no ultimate solidity or reality. This realization is what the tradition calls the path of seeing, the moment when you directly perceive emptiness for the first time. But even this isn't the end. After the initial realization, there's a long process of familiarization, gradually extending that direct perception until it pervades all of your experience. The Tibetan tradition maps this in extraordinary detail through the paths and grounds, specific stages of realization that practitioners traverse on the way to full enlightenment. At each stage, you're purifying more subtle levels of karmic obscuration and strengthening your wisdom and compassion. The ultimate goal is the Dharmakaya, the truth body of a Buddha, where all karmic propensities have been completely purified and all qualities fully developed. At that point, you're no longer subject to karma in any conventional sense. You don't accumulate new karma because all your actions arise from perfect wisdom and compassion. Previous karma has been completely purified. You can manifest in any form, in any realm, to help any being, completely free from the limitations that bind ordinary beings. This is the fulfillment of both karma and dharma, using the law of cause and effect so skillfully that you transcend it entirely. But you don't have to wait until enlightenment to benefit from these teachings. Every moment you practice, you're transforming your relationship to karma and dharma. Every moment of mindfulness, every act of kindness, every investigation into reality's nature is planting seeds that will ripen as future wisdom and compassion. You're not passive victim of cosmic forces beyond your control. You're an active participant in your own evolution, using the principles of Dharma to work skillfully with the mechanism of karma. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Click that button and activate notifications. We're creating a community of serious practitioners here. People who aren't satisfied with superficial answers, who want to understand reality deeply and live accordingly. You belong to that community. And keep watching, because we're about to bring all of this together with a vision of how to live as an embodiment of these teachings. So how do you actually live as someone who understands the profound difference between karma and dharma? How does this understanding translate into moment-by-moment choices in the complexity of modern life? The Tibetan tradition doesn't ask you to retreat from the world or live in isolation. It asks you to engage fully with life while maintaining wisdom about its nature. This is the essence of the Bodhisattva path, which we could describe as karma perfected through Dharma. The Bodhisattva understands karma completely, knows that every action has consequences, sees the vast web of causation extending infinitely in all directions. But instead of being paralyzed by this understanding, the Bodhisattva is empowered by it. If your actions create results, then act skillfully. If small actions can have vast consequences, then let every action be motivated by wisdom and compassion. If karma accumulated over lifetimes has created your current circumstances, then use these circumstances as opportunities to accumulate karma that benefits all beings. The Bodhisattva vow is essentially a commitment to use karma as a tool for universal liberation. You vow to accumulate infinite positive karma through countless acts of generosity, ethical discipline, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. But you don't accumulate this karma for yourself. You dedicate all of it to the enlightenment of every sentient being. This dedication transforms the nature of the karma itself. It becomes uncontaminated karma, merit that serves awakening rather than ordinary samsaric pleasure. In daily life, this means bringing awareness to every action, speech, and thought. Before you act, you pause and ask what intention is driving this action. Is it wisdom or ignorance? Compassion or self-centeredness? Acceptance or aversion? You don't judge yourself harshly when you notice unskillful intentions. You simply acknowledge them and choose differently. Over time, this becomes natural. You're programming your consciousness with new patterns, new karmic propensities that automatically incline toward virtue and wisdom. You're in a difficult conversation with a family member who's been critical and judgmental. Your habitual karma is to become defensive, to argue, to say something hurtful in return. But you've been practicing Dharma. You notice the impulse to react. You remember that this person is suffering, driven by their own confusion and pain. You choose patience instead of reactivity, compassion instead of defensiveness. In that moment, you're breaking a karmic chain that might have extended for lifetimes. You're planting seeds of patience and compassion that will ripen as future peace and connection. You're working on a creative project, and it's not going well. Your habitual karma is frustration, harsh self-judgment, maybe giving up entirely. But you recognize these as just more mental patterns, more karmic momentum from past habits. You apply Dharma principles. You practice patience with yourself. You investigate the perfectionism that's driving the harsh judgment. You reconnect with your original inspiration for the project. You find the joy in the process rather than being attached to a particular outcome. The project might succeed or fail by conventional standards, but you've transformed your relationship to effort and result. This is what Tibetan teachings mean by living in accordance with Dharma, while understanding karma. You're not trying to escape causality or pretend that your actions don't matter. You're taking your actions more seriously than ever because you understand their far-reaching consequences. But you're not rigid or fearful. You have confidence that wisdom and compassion naturally lead to beneficial results, and that mistakes can be purified through sincere practice. The tradition offers specific aspirations to maintain this perspective. Every morning, you can set your motivation for the day. May all my actions today be beneficial to all beings. May I avoid harm in body, speech, and mind. May I cultivate wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. Every evening you can review your day. Where did I act skillfully? Where did I create harm? What karmic seeds did I plant? How can I purify the negative and dedicate the positive? This isn't neurotic self-monitoring. It's taking responsibility for your mind and your impact on the world. As you live this way over time, something profound shifts. The sharp distinction between karma as determinism and free will as complete autonomy dissolves. You see that they're not contradictory. Your choices are conditioned by past karma, absolutely true. But those choices also have real power to create new karma and eventually to purify all karma. You're simultaneously determined and free, bound and liberated, a wave expressing the ocean's movement and the ocean itself. This paradox points to the deepest teachings in Tibetan Buddhism, the nature of mind itself. Your mind is both the creator of karma and the space in which karma appears. It's both the problem and the solution, both bondage and liberation. When you realize the nature of mind, you realize that all of samsara and nirvana, all of karma and dharma, all of suffering and awakening arise within that space and have no reality apart from it. This is where the Dzogchen or Great Perfection teachings point to the recognition of awareness itself as primordially pure, completely untouched by the karmic patterns that seem to define you. In that recognition, karma loses its binding power. You still act carefully, still accumulate virtue, still serve beings with compassion, but you're doing it from freedom rather than from fear, from wisdom rather than from hope. As we come to the close of this exploration, take a moment to really absorb what we've covered. Karma is the law of intentional action and its consequences, the mechanism by which past patterns perpetuate themselves and create your experience. Dharma is the teaching about how this mechanism works and the path to use it skillfully for liberation rather than continued bondage. The difference between them is the difference between being unconsciously swept along by patterns and consciously choosing to create new patterns. The relationship between them is that Dharma practice is how you work with karma to achieve freedom. What aspect of these teachings will you put into practice first? Will you start watching your intentions more carefully? Will you begin a purification practice for past harmful actions? Will you commit to accumulating virtue and dedicating it to all beings? Share your commitment in the comments. Making it public strengthens your resolve and inspires others. And if you found value here, if something clicked or shifted for you, that's the result of positive karma from your past practice. Honor that by sharing this video with others who are searching for these understandings. Subscribe if you haven't already. Be part of this community that's dedicated to genuine transformation, to understanding reality deeply and living accordingly. We're exploring the most profound teachings humanity has produced, making them accessible and relevant to contemporary life. You deserve this knowledge. All beings deserve liberation. May the merit of this teaching reach everyone everywhere. May all beings understand karma and dharma clearly. May all beings use that understanding to achieve complete awakening for the benefit of all.